cortex and the medulla. The cortex, if you remember from talking about other structures, is always going to be the outer area. So the cortex here is going to be the top portion, okay, about the top third. And then the lower 2/3 will be the medulla. The way that we're going to tell histologically whether we're in the cortex or medulla is whether it looks kind of like crazy squiggly with all these like squiggly tubules and large circular structures like this, or whether it looks like the tubes are long and straight. That's how we're going to tell the difference. Okay. And just looking at this, so you can kind of see the tubes that you see that are like this pinkish tan color. Those are the nephron tubules, and then this structure here, the circle structure, this is the renal corpuscle. And I'll talk about the structures in that in a second. This model is just a model of the renal corpuscle. Okay, so make sure that you can identify the parts on these two as well as on the slides. Let me make sure that we're on the right thing. We'll get started on this video. So I'll kind of note the magnifications that I'm working with, but I don't expect you guys to really be needing to magnify any of these. We're going to be looking at some pretty general structures here. Perfect. All right, so actually I'll show you the cortex and the medulla in a second, but this is going to be an example of the medulla. You can see that the lumens that we see for the nephron tubules are all lined up pretty nicely. And so this area here is like the surrounding of the nephron. So we just put a pointer there if you're asking for nephron tubules. Okay? Alright, these are all nephron tubules. This is all medulla. And see how it's getting squiggly now? Now we're into the cortex. So you can definitely tell that we're in the cortex when you start seeing these darker spheres because, well, I guess circles because we're just looking at a 2D image, but when you see these circles, that's how you can be sure that we're in the cortex because those are the renal corpuscles. Now, this entire structure is the renal corpuscle. So if we're asking you to identify the general structure at the end of the pointer, we're asking for the renal corpuscle. Now it's going to be broken into two areas. It's the outer ring and then all the stuff in the center. The outer ring is the renal capsule, and then what's in the middle is the glomerulus. Okay? And, am I telling you right? Yeah. And so again, just remember that that's how you tell the difference between the cortex and the medulla too, because you would have to identify this area here as the cortex, and the other area that we were just looking at as the medulla. So I'll go back to the medulla so you can get it for comparison's sake. But if we were just to put this slide up and ask you to identify the layer, then we'd be asking you, or maybe pointer or not, we'd have a pointer if we wanted to, but this isn't one that would necessarily need a pointer. If we were just asking for the layer, then we would be asking for the cortex. Okay? If we're asking for the whole slide, we're asking for the kidney. Those are kind of the levels of organization that we're going to be addressing with this. So just one last bit for comparison. Here's medulla. Okay, nice, straight nephron tubules. All right, any questions about the kidney? All right, next we're going to look at the ureter and the urinary